Chapter 26. The Boarding Action. The Iron Orchid shifted from a state of quiet rest to absolute focus in a matter of seconds. "Everyone to your stations," Amara ordered, her voice echoing clearly over the ship-wide comms. Doc bolted from the cargo bay, snatching a medkit as he raced up the companionway to ready the triage beds. Jake tore toward the flight deck, eyes sharp for any sign of unwanted attention in Aloris's orbit. In the secondary cargo bay, the Athelgard amplifier's thrum shivered through the ship as Tess and Freya set the power sequence in motion. Finn and Raffi stood checking their weapons in silence. Finn slid his blaster into his hip holster, checking the spare charge packs on his tactical vest. Beside him, Raffi looked like a walking fortress in his matte black ablative armor, the suppressed mag rifle resting comfortably in his massive hands. Ellie, James, and Jade formed a tight circle on the floor, hands linked. They seemed tiny beneath the red glow of the vast hold, yet their faces radiated calm, unbreakable resolve. "All right," Finn said, taking a deep breath and looking at Raffi. "We hit the room, we grab the kids, we get out. No heroics unless we have to." "Understood," Raffi rumbled, clicking the safety off his rifle. "Wait," Amara said suddenly, holding up a hand as she stepped into the center of the bay. She paused, her brow furrowing as a thought struck her. She looked at the three children preparing to tear a hole in reality, and then she turned and sprinted toward a series of storage lockers set into the far bulkhead. "Amara, what is it?" Finn asked, watching her tear through a locker filled with spare comms equipment and various outdated technological toys they rarely used. "I'm going to record this," Amara said, her voice tight with excitement. She pulled out a small cube and a compact tripod, hurrying back to the center of the room. She quickly extended the tripod legs and set the camera down, adjusting the lens to point directly at Ellie, James, and Jade, sitting on the floor. "Record it?" Tess asked, looking up from her datapad. "Captain, we're about to commit a highly illegal boarding action on a corporate assault ship. Do we really want video evidence?" "We aren't keeping it," Amara replied, tapping a rapid sequence into the top of the cube to initiate the recording. A tiny red light blinked to life on the camera. "When we send the broadcast later, we can add this. We let the universe see exactly what Athelgard is doing to these kids." Amara looked down at the three children, her green eyes fierce. "And we let them see exactly what you can do." Finn nodded slowly, a dark smile touching his lips. It was brilliant. Athelgard could deny a data dump, but they couldn't deny unedited video footage of 3 abducted children opening a jump gate with their minds. "Are you ready, kids?" Amara asked softly, stepping back from the camera to stand beside Tess and Freya. Ellie didn't open her eyes. "We're ready." "Tess, bring the amplifier to 30%, Finn ordered, stepping up beside Raffi and squaring his shoulders toward the empty space in front of the kids. The amplifier's low vibration climbed into a sharp mechanical whine, the thick cable's violet light glowing against the deck. "Power is steady at 30, Tess confirmed, her fingers flying across her datapad. "James, Jade, focus on the holding cell," Ellie whispered, her voice surprisingly steady over the roar of the machine. "Don't push hard, just fold the air." The red emergency lighting in the cargo bay began to warp, but it wasn't only the light that warped. The whole atmosphere of the cavernous hold transformed. The biting ozone tang of the amplifier faded, replaced by the scent of ancient forests and rushing rivers. A deep, golden warmth swept through the room, banishing the chill from the metal deck. Finn felt the hair on his arms stand up. It wasn't the freezing, terrifying pressure of the shadows. It was a radiant, golden comfort. The angels were with them. Finn glanced at Amara. Her eyes were wide, and the tension had completely melted from her shoulders. Even Rafi let out a slow, amazed breath, lowering his rifle a fraction of an inch as the protective warmth washed over them. The three children didn't look strained or exhausted. They were all smiling, their faces bathed in the unseen light. The empty space directly in front of the kids didn't tear. It simply dissolved. A deep, swirling pool of absolute blackness blossomed in the air, expanding rapidly until it formed a perfectly circular, silent gateway. The edges of the portal shimmered brightly with that warm, golden energy, holding the door perfectly stable. Through the golden-edged portal, Finn didn't see the sterile white walls of the Umbrix facility. He saw the dim, utilitarian gray bulkheads of an assault corvette. He saw a row of cramped, reinforced holding cells lining a narrow corridor. And standing directly in the center of the hallway, their backs currently turned to the silently opening portal, were two heavily armored Athelgard mercenaries carrying compact assault rifles. "We're in," Finn whispered, raising his blaster, the golden warmth at his back giving him absolute clarity. He took a slow step forward, preparing to move through the gate. He turned his head slightly toward the massive man beside him, opening his mouth to whisper a quick tactical plan for taking the guards down quietly. Rafi didn't wait for a plan. Still rooted in the Iron Orchid's cargo bay, Rafi snapped his mag rifle to his shoulder in a single, lightning-fast motion. Two silenced rounds tore through the golden portal, striking with lethal precision. The Ethelgard mercenaries never even turned or cried out. High-velocity slugs punched through their helmets, dropping them instantly. Their armor crashed to the deck in a final clatter. Finn blinked, lowering his blaster slightly as he stared through at the two motionless bodies. "Target neutralized," Rafi rumbled casually, stepping past Finn and ducking his massive shoulders to squeeze through the glowing gate. Finn shook his head, following the weapons specialist through the folded air. The transition was incredibly smooth, the golden warmth of the angels clinging to him for a brief second before the sterile, recycled air of the scythe washed over him. They stood in the narrow corridor, their boots planted on the gray deck plating of Carver's ship. Rafi was already moving, his rifle sweeping the far end of the hallway for any additional patrols. "Corridor's clear. Check the cells, Finn. We don't have long before someone comes looking for these two." Finn didn't waste a second. He stepped over the fallen guards and moved quickly to the row of reinforced doors lining the right side of the hallway. Unlike the magnetic seals on Umbrix, these cells featured small, barred viewing windows at eye level. He peered into the first cell. It was empty. He moved to the second. 9 frightened children huddled in the far corner of the cramped, shadowy cell. They were painfully thin, dressed in oversized gray tunics, their faces mirrors of Ellie's when she first arrived on the Silly Goose. Wide, terrified eyes stared at the heavy door, clearly having heard the guards fall. "Found them!" Finn whispered over his shoulder to Rafi. Finn stepped back from the door, aiming his blaster directly at the electronic locking mechanism. He fired a single, concentrated blast of plasma. The lock sparked violently, melting into a puddle of glowing slag. Finn gently pushed the door open and stepped into the cell, immediately lowering his weapon to avoid scaring them further. "It's okay," Finn said gently, holding his empty hands up. "We're friends. We're here to get you off this ship." The children didn't move. They stared at him, paralyzed by a mixture of shock and terror. Come on, Finn urged softly, kneeling down. You have to trust me. We don't have much time. One of the older kids, a boy who looked to be around 12, finally found his voice. Who are you? He whispered, his voice trembling. Did Miss Church send you? No, Finn said firmly, shaking his head. I'm the guy who steals things from Miss Church, and right now, I'm stealing you. He stood up, offering a reassuring smile and gesturing toward the open cell door. There are some people waiting for you right outside. Let's go. Still bewildered, the children scrambled upright, bare feet slapping the cold metal as they rushed from the cell into the corridor. They halted, awestruck by the glowing golden gate suspended in the hallway. Nervous glances flicked to Raffi, the armored giant standing guard with his rifle raised. He looked fearsome, but his back stayed turned, eyes on the shadows to shield their escape. And standing on the other side of the portal, waving eagerly from the red-lit cargo bay of the Iron Orchid, were 3 children and a woman. Come on! Amara shouted through the gate, holding her hand out toward the hesitant children. Hurry! The hesitant children needed no further urging. At the sight of the golden doorway and the welcoming faces beyond, they broke into a run. They dashed through the gate, emerging into the Iron Orchid's cargo bay. Ellie, Jade, and James greeted them, quickly guiding the newcomers away from the shimmering edge of the gate. Right, let's go, Amara called out to Finn from the other side, her hand hovering near her holstered blaster as she kept an eye on the newly rescued kids. Raffi, let's move, Finn ordered, backing slowly toward the gate. Raffi didn't drop his rifle. He walked backwards with practiced military precision, keeping his eyes locked on the shadowy far end of the Corvette's corridor. He stepped through the golden portal first, crouching low the moment his boots hit the deck of the Orchid. He kept his rifle raised, aiming directly back through the gate to cover Finn's retreat. Finn, come on, Raffi rumbled. Just a second, Finn replied, pausing at the threshold. He lingered in the sterile gray hallway of the Scythe, the oppressive silence pressing in. A surge of fury ignited in his chest. This was the ship of Leon's killer. He would have vengeance today. But first, Carver needed to know it was coming. Finn looked at the wall beside the cell door. He recognized the sleek, recessed design of a standard corporate comms panel. He reached out and hit the universal override switch, broadcasting his voice directly into every channel and speaker on the ship. Hey, Carver! Finn's voice echoed sharply through the quiet corridor, dripping with cold, raw fury. I hope you can hear me. On the bridge of the Scythe, Carver froze. He stared at the overhead speakers, his violet eyes widening in absolute shock as the voice of a dead courier's brother filled his command deck. We haven't met, Finn continued smoothly, his voice echoing across every deck of the assault corvette. But I know you know who I am. You killed my brother, Leon. Finn took a slow breath, stepping closer to the golden edge of the portal. I just want you to know that you and everyone on this ship will be dead soon, Finn promised, his voice dropping to a deadly, gravelly whisper. And there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Without waiting for a response, Finn turned and stepped backwards through the folded air. He stepped onto the deck of the Iron Orchid. The moment his boots cleared the threshold, Ellie, James, and Jade didn't hesitate. They severed the connection. The golden shimmer vanished instantly. The gate folded in on itself, disappearing with a soft, final sigh, leaving the cargo bay completely sealed from the void. They're through, Amara breathed, taking in the crowd of wide-eyed, shivering children filling her cargo bay. She spun to Tess and Freya by the humming amplifier. "Kids are secure. We need to strike before Carver traces the broadcast." "Machine is stable," Tess confirmed, her fingers flying across the datapad wired into the amplifier. "We have the power." Amara looked down at the girl. "All right, Ellie. It's time. Drop the sun." Ellie moved without hesitation, dropping to the deck and tugging James and Jade down beside her. The three formed a tight circle, hands clasped. This time, their eyes held no fear. They knew exactly what must be done. "Tess, bring the power back up," Ellie said, her voice completely steady over the roaring thrum of the amplifier. Tess slid the digital control on her datapad to match the voltage metric they had used to reach the holding cells. The machine hummed, the violet cables pulsing steadily with contained energy. The kids closed their eyes. This gate was not for passage. It was a weapon. Far above Aloris's blue-green surface, just beyond the atmosphere, the vacuum of space folded in on itself. A silent circular tear shimmered open, edged with that familiar golden light. Thousands of light-years away, in the polluted, crowded orbit of Draven, the scythe was beginning to move. On the bridge, Carver was screaming orders, demanding his tactical officers lock onto the source of the internal broadcast. The massive sublight engines of the heavy assault corvette were spooling up, burning hot, and pulling massive amounts of plasma into their primary containment manifolds. And then, deep inside the absolute center of the scythe's primary engine core, the space seamlessly folded. The second gate opened, linking the hyper-pressurized, superheated plasma of the Corvette's engine directly to the empty, freezing vacuum above Aloris. The physics were instantaneous and catastrophic. Above Draven, silence reigned in the void. A blinding flash of white-hot light marked the collapse of the scythe's magnetic shielding. The Corvette didn't merely explode, it vaporized, devoured from within by its own furious fusion. Carver, his armored guards, and his nightmare vanished in a cloud of glowing ash. Simultaneously, above Aloris, a massive, terrifying lance of raw, orange plasma blasted out of the opened gate in the sky. The superheated fire vented harmlessly into the cold vacuum for a fraction of a second, burning brighter than the local star. And then, Ellie let the connection drop. The gate collapsed in on itself and winked out of existence. The flame vanished from the sky above Aloris, and the roaring mechanical whine of the amplifier in the Orchid's cargo bay spun down into a low, idle hum. Ellie opened her eyes and lowered her hands. The suffocating tension in the cargo bay melted away, replaced by the quiet, ragged breaths of the spent crew. She looked up at Finn, her dark eyes clear and calm. Ellie stood and said softly, "It's done." Finn gazed at the three children, the crushing weight of his brother's murder finally lifting. He dropped to his knees and pulled Ellie into a grateful hug. "Thank you," he whispered, voice breaking. "Thank you." Amara stepped forward, wrapping her arms around both of them. They had done it. Athelgard's ghost program was shattered, the children saved, and Leon avenged. For the first time since that call on Wynn, Finn truly believed they might be okay. "All right," Amara said finally, pulling back and wiping a tear from her eye. She looked around the crowded cargo bay at the 9 wide-eyed, shivering kids they had just pulled from the dark. "Doc, let's get these kids to the med bay. Tess, Freya, don't disconnect that machine yet. We still have a broadcast to send."